T-minus 30 seconds. T-minus 20 seconds. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Kush's Corner here on the Trap Talk Reptile Network, the coolest reptile network in the world. Tonight, I am joined by Logan Hope. We have lots of topics to discuss, be it enclosure design, keeping philosophy, where we see the hobby going in the future, particularly doing a deep dive into his incredible Vietnamese blue beauty snake enclosure. But before we get into all of that, as always, USARK. So USARK is the organization that is fighting for our rights to keep our reptiles, to run our reptile businesses, and to live this lifestyle that we love so much with our animals. Check out usark.org for all of the information you need to know about the organization. And on that website, you will find updates on legislation, both on local and national levels, that we all need to be keeping up with. You can also become a USARK member on that site as well. As a community, we have strength in numbers. The more people that are behind the cause, the better. If you're not already a USARK member, I would highly recommend you checking that out. All right, everybody. Thank you for being here this evening. Shout out to the live chat already. Got a bunch of people already hanging out tonight. Most appreciated. If you're here on YouTube, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. A new podcast drops here every single day of the week from some of the best hosts in the game, talking about a wide variety of topics within the reptile world. We are also on the audio platforms, be that Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your audio content from. A follow and a 5-star review on any of those platforms would be most appreciated. And with all of that housekeeping out of the way, let's get Logan on the show. Hey, Logan, how's it going, man?
Hey, what's up? Scrub Daddy himself.
I forget where I was, but your idea that you came up with, the brilliant branding, was on some product I saw, and it broke my heart.
Are you talking about the actual Scrub Daddy sponge?
No, it may have had something to do with it, but your specific idea was on something.
Yeah, it wasn't an original name. I'll admit it.
Oh, well,
I think it's more fitting for you than it is like a kitchen sponge, though.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely agree with that. I do wonder, yeah, it was a Target, which is just, I can't believe they were listening in on our conversation like that in Pomona. I wonder, when, like, can I fly under the radar enough to not get a cease and desist, and how long can that go on for? You
just gotta leave like one letter out or add something extra. Like if you did like Scrub Daddy $$, something like that.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, there could be something to it.
We'll workshop it.
Anyway, so man, how's it going? How's things going up there in the Great White North?
The Great White North. It's not that white anymore. We actually we just started getting warm weather this week. It was really weird though. Like I was telling my dad this because he's really into weather. This morning,
most dads are.
I know it's I don't know what it is, but this morning and yesterday morning had a 40-degree difference.
Damn.
Like, yeah, yesterday morning all the windows of the house were open by 6-7 a.m. and then this morning like it was sweaters and socks on and
wow.
But that's Michigan for spring. Yeah. Like you don't get that gradual change. It's just like all of a sudden it's warm.
Yeah. No, I don't miss those days at all. I like when a cold day is in the 60s. That to me is where I want to be. So.
And then now you're in South Texas where that's like your winter temperature.
Yeah, we had 1 or 2 nights hit single digits this year.
That's impressive.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, that big polar vortex where everybody got snow. Like Florida got snow.
Yeah,
Texas.
we didn't get any snow, but just north of us did. Like half an hour north into New Mexico got snow. It was kind of crazy. It was right when we were driving to Pomona, and it was really crazy to see the weather shift, because like we're like driving and seeing the snow and then like going into it and then going through it and being like, what the hell is like, like just a very minuscule geographical difference was extremely different as far as the weather went. I mean, literally, like when it's snowing, you can look off the like our front patio, look into New Mexico, and the mountains are covered in snow. In El Paso, there'll be just a couple on the peaks, and then down in Mexico, nothing at all. And that's like a 45-minute difference north to south.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, it is really cool to see. But I'm like, man, you wouldn't think that. Like we're like right on that edge. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's
See,
really
Michigan's not like that because we're just all flat everywhere. So you could drive, 4 hours either direction, and it's probably gonna be the same exact weather.
Yeah.
But I grew up in Washington State, and like most people think Washington State is like Seattle and like temperate rainforest and evergreen trees everywhere. But the Cascade Mountains run like right through the middle of it. And so like the left side of the state is all temperate rainforest, foresty, is really green. And then you cross the mountains and it's a high prairie desert. But that's like a 40-minute pass. So like once you get on the pass in Seattle or something, it's like 40 degrees and rainy. You get up over the other side, it's like 85 and sunny in like a 45-minute drive.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like completely different worlds.
Huh. I've never been to that part of the country, but I'd love to one day. It's it's absolutely beautiful up there. But yeah, I didn't realize it was that quick of a change. That's insane. Damn. Well, speaking of you growing up in Washington, give us kind of your backstory, kind of your life, how herpetoculture, your work with inverts, how that kind of all came about, and what got to where you are now.
Yeah, my origin story. I don't know, like pretty much everyone else in this hobby, it's something that just kind of came with me from an early age of just loving critters. Growing up in Seattle, though, like there wasn't really the reptiles. Like that was never part of it. If you drove to a lake or something, you could find a garter snake. If you went to a storm ditch or something, you might find some chorus frogs or something. But like that was the extent of it. Like I don't think I even saw a salamander until I was like 18 years old in college. But there was a lot of cool bugs. And so growing up, like I've just been always obsessed like with bugs. Like all my friends and family growing up just know me as like the bug boy. And so like that was always kind of like the root of it. Just always loving bugs. From an early age, I knew like I wanted to be an entomologist. Like I wanted to, make a living studying, working with, just doing something with bugs. Now, I loved like every other critter too. So like if we went somewhere, I was out all day, all night, flipping stuff, catching snakes, frogs, lizards, like whatever I could find. And then let's see, I started getting, well, I had like little not tarantulas, but like spiders and bugs that I would catch in the backyard in jars, and little terrariums and critter keepers, and aquariums that I would get from yard sales or off the side of the road, just like growing up. But then it wasn't until I was, I think 14 when I like ordered my first like exotic pet. So like my very first pet was like a parakeet. I had that growing up. But my first like exotic pet, if you would, was a desert hairy scorpion. And this was back when there was two online vendors selling like bugs and stuff. Like it wasn't very common. You'd go to a pet store and you'd see one or two tarantulas and maybe a scorpion or something like that. So I got my first scorpion, was hooked. He was super cool. And then for the next like, I don't know, maybe 4 years, I just started getting, one here, one there. Started, kind of building the collection a little bit. then I got my first reptile. My first reptile was a tokay gecko.
Okay.
That I got in, when was it? I think it was like 2012, 2011 or something.
Okay.
So he was like the first reptile, and I had him up until like a couple of years ago. And then my first snake was a red-tailed boa. But that's kind of a funny story, because before I transferred to like University of Washington, where I ended up going, I did door-to-door sales for, ironically, a pest control company.
Okay.
And one of the people that we sold pest control to gave it to my buddy. We were both there. A snake. They didn't know what it was, and they were just like, "We got this. Please take it." And it was in like a, I don't know, 30-gallon fish tank with like a hamster hide, an aquarium plant. And so I was like, "All right, I got it." And I flew back home from Denver with it, with a giant box that said, live snake. Freaked everybody out at the airport. But that was like my introduction into like snake keeping. But like, I guess going back a little bit, like I grew up in Seattle. In high school, I moved to Walla Walla, Washington, which is on the other side of the state in the deserty half.
Okay.
Finished up high school. I went to college at Washington State University, which has like a huge biology program, huge entomology and ag program. Got to be buddies with, the entomology professors. I worked at an entomology lab for like a year there. And then graduated with my bachelor's in, it's biology with an emphasis on entomology. It's like the equivalent of like a minor. Yeah, I started there and I was like, I'm going to get my entomology degree. And then they're like, well, there's only one school that actually offers a bachelor's of entomology, and this isn't it. So I got the next best thing. And for a while, my plan was, I'm going to get my PhD in entomology. Like, that was my plan since I was probably 10 years old or something.
Oh, wow.
And working in the lab was super fun, but it kind of made me realize getting a doctorate seems like a lot of work, and the payoff doesn't really seem worth it. Seems like most of the time you're just kind of writing papers and crunching data and stuff like that, where I really liked being out in the field.
Sure.
So like, as an undergrad, when I worked there, like, I was doing nothing but field work. So like, every day we'd go hiking into the mountains, do transects and collect insects and plant samples, and just like really fun stuff. And then, and so all through college, like, I kept stuff. I had, my tokay gecko, I had my red-tailed boa. And then right when I started college, I got a little baby green iguana, which I always wanted growing up, because, back in our days growing up, I guess, like, that's kind of what there was. It was green iguanas everywhere. And so I always had the dream of having a free range iguana. And so got to college, got a little baby, and realized like, you can't free range a baby green iguana. So, but yeah, she's doing great. She's like my baby. And so I guess from there, like, it just kind of snowballed. I graduated college and got a job over in Michigan. And just the longer I kept animals, the more I loved them, the more I loved learning about them, building the enclosures, just watching their behavior. And so, just kind of kept snowballing. And now I've got, I think we're at 12 snakes, I think, like 15 geckos, maybe a handful of non-gecko lizards, tortoises, bunch of spiders and bugs, toads, dart frogs. Like, it's a zoo. And a dog.
Yes, can't forget. So was there any sort of like a herpetoculture scene in Seattle when you were growing up, or was that something you didn't really experience until you were a little bit older?
Really? Yeah. Like, I was always just the oddball guy who liked bugs and had weird pets. Like, I had one buddy in Walla Walla. I went to community college for a little bit to get all like my prereqs and everything done. And I had one buddy there who had a ball python.
Okay.
And then later at Washington State University, I made like a couple friends that had, other reptiles. One guy specifically who like kept tegus and, a bunch of snakes and some really cool stuff. And so him and I really connected, but there wasn't really a community.
Yeah.
I remember in college, I didn't go to my first reptile show till I think it was 2017, and we drove 6 hours to get there.
Oh,
And,
wow.
yeah. And at that time, like there was one table selling bugs.
Yeah.
So like, I don't know, just never really a strong community. It was just always kind of like that lone bug loving weirdo.
Yeah, no, I know how that went for sure. I can relate. Yeah, so to me, and from someone who's on the outside, the bug world seems to have really blown up over the last handful of years. Is that a good assessment from someone who knows nothing?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Like not just tarantulas either, like
right.
just as a whole.
So was that another thing that was just like prompted by COVID?
I think partly. I think also it's just kind of I want to say like a newer section of, let's say the herpetological reptile hobby, like umbrella.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely kind of the newer side of it.
Okay.
It's just, it's just kind of a different separate corner of it. I think COVID definitely helped. Like we saw the huge isopod boom in 2019 to 2023, and people starting to realize like, hey, I can have a cool pet in a small enclosure that I can just keep on my desk or on my table or something like that. And once you get a colony of isopods, then how different is that from a jumping spider? How different is that from a little brachypelma tarantula? Just kind of it's really easy to snowball because most of these things aren't that expensive as babies. Like you could get a really cool baby tarantula for under $20.
Okay.
And then put another 20 into the enclosure and like you're good for a year kind of thing. So it's a lot just easier.
Sure.
What is the term? Like barrier to entry, I think it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I remember back when I was like, a young teenager learning about, what was considered like the bioactive enclosures of the time. There were springtails and isopods, and isopods were one thing.
Yeah.
Now there are a million things. Now there's rubber duckies and shit and cows, and I don't know what the fuck's going on.
Dude, there is an insane amount. And then you've got some that are like the tiny isopod that goes for like $1,000 because it's got spikes and stuff on it, and it's wild. My first, like, I was making bioactive enclosures before bioactive was even a term. Like I remember in 2014, I got a Goliath bird eater tarantula, like a big boy.
Okay.
And I read something on Arachnoboards, the old tarantula forum, about people using isopods and springtails to help clean up their tropical terrariums and stuff. And I could only find like one place online selling them, and they had springtails, giant Spanish orange isopods, dwarf purple, and dwarf white, and like that's it for isopods.
Yeah. And now, I mean, how many varieties would you say there are today?
Hundreds.
Really, that many?
Oh yeah, because you got species, then you have morphs off of those species, like the zebras. Like everybody loves zebra isopods. I think there's like 15 to 20 different morphs or color forms of just zebra isopods.
Oh,
yeah.
All right. Interesting.
Yeah, that's how you get like really diehard isopod people, and they have, their 300 bins in their basement. But that's like, they're so easy to care for.
Sure. Yeah, shoot. I mean, hey, more power to all of you isopod guys. That rabbit hole feels too deep to jump down for me. So.
What was your first reptile though? How'd you get into it?
Oh, it was, I mean, shoot, it's been like my whole life. My first reptile was a ball python, like everyone else. But yeah, so I guess people who are on here probably heard the story. I'll do kind of a cliff note. So like, it was kind of like my whole life thing. Steve Irwin was really huge, like when I was really young. And when was the first time you went to Tinley? What year?
2021, I think.
Was there did they have the giant alligator sitting there at the front, just chilling?
No.
Okay, I think COVID is when that ended, but so they always had this. It was Bubba the alligator, it was this famous alligator in Chicago who he was like this puppy dog, tame, knew all the commands. They would do kids' birthday parties, schools, demonstrations and stuff. And my parents got Bubba the alligator for my 4th birthday party. And I showed up fully dressed head to toe as Steve Irwin so like from that point on, it was pretty clear what was going on. And then like the next serendipitous thing was my pediatrician growing up was one of like the high up members of the Chicago Herp Society. And they did this show. I think they still do it. It's called Reptile Fest. It's kind of, imagine the scale of like that Dallas show, maybe like 2/3 of that Reptile show style, but 100% educational.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, no sales. And I started going to that, and I was probably 6 years old, and friends and I running around holding snakes, petting iguanas and tortoises, and doing a bunch of crazy stuff. My mom had that. I don't know if she's listening or not right now, but she I'll call her out a little bit. She had that like salmonella paranoia that isn't really real unless you like suck on a red-eared slider. So I wasn't allowed to have a snake until I was like a reptile until I was like 10, and I got my first one when I was 9. So I finagled it a little bit, but right around that time is when I found like snake bites on YouTube and learned about the industry and stuff like that. So from that point on, it was like, I want to be a snake breeder. Like that's what I want to be when I grow up.
That's cool.
So, yeah, I sacrificed a whole hell of a lot of childhood because I wanted people to take me seriously. Like I was always head first into it. It worked out enough for me to say that it was probably worth it to sacrifice being a teenager for the sake of this. But yeah,
I mean, that sounds like a pretty cool teenage era though. Like breeding snakes, like. I haven't bred any snakes.
No, it was definitely interesting. I worked at a zoo outside of Chicago. It's called the Wildlife Discovery Center. The owner, Rob Carmichael, still runs it out of near Memphis now, doing educational shows. But it was like a public exhibition. They had a bunch of crazy exotic venomous, king cobras, Mangshan vipers, mambas, a bunch of rattlesnakes. Bunch of other cool non-venomous monitors, crocodilians, cool mammals, bobcat, birds. So like I was 13 when I started going there. I'm like, this is insane. So I said kind of like thing after thing happened to me where it just kind of kept pushing me in this direction. And, much to the ultimate dismay of, parents wanting me to make something of myself. They're like, he's going to try this and whether he likes it or not, or whether we like it or not. So
I think that's how my parents felt too. Cause like they were supportive. Like, I don't want to say they weren't supportive, but they were very still kind of like, it's a little weird. Like I was told like, don't bring home any more tarantulas. And then, I would just keep bringing them home and have to ask for forgiveness. Or when I flew home with that red-tailed boa, like the only way I could do that is because I convinced my parents that it was going to live at the college. Like they did not want a big snake living in their house. And then I brought it home and they realized it's a super sweet little puppy dog snake and they loved it.
Yeah. Okay. No, I mean, I don't say my parents weren't supportive. They were, I had a room in the basement where I was, they let me keep snakes, and then that turned into another room in the basement, and
that's lucky. That's
it was great. Yeah, if it wasn't for that, I definitely wouldn't be doing this as I am now. So I was extremely lucky in that sense. So yeah, it's kind of crazy sometimes looking back on exactly how it all went, but hey, we're here today. So what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I want to start getting into this conversation about your enclosure design. that's, looking at your Instagram and everything, it's very eye catching what you do with your enclosures.
Thank you.
I guess before we get into specifics, was there something in particular that inspired you to go down this route with your enclosures, or was this something that you were always like, I want to take a little slice of nature and put it in my house?
I just slice of nature. Like I said, I've been making bioactive before that term was a thing. Just not using false bottom and not knowing all the kind of nuances of it,
Sure.
but having good soil with live plants and bioactive little bugs in there and stuff. Like I just wanted to feel like I was looking into like a little slice of nature and seeing the animals in that part of nature interacting with their environments and stuff. And so that's what I like. And honestly, I find myself falling more into the loving enclosure or building enclosures and the design and functionality of it, almost more than keeping the animal itself. But if you're able to join them in the middle and make something really cool where you have this really fun enclosure that you're passionate about, but then you also get to see how your animal interacts with it all and having different things for them to interact with. My thing is always animals have, especially let's say reptiles and stuff, they have so many natural behaviors, and most of them we don't really know, right? We're not watching blue beauties, scrub pythons, we're not watching these things in the wild 24/7 or long enough to really know everything they do and why they do it and how they do it and stuff. And so if you're able to kind of provide as much options as possible for those snakes to kind of do as much as possible, that's where I get my big feeling of rewarding, I guess. That's not a word, but you know what I mean.
I do know what you mean. Yeah, no, it really is. It's amazing how much they will react to that environment you give them. That was never something that I did when I was younger. I didn't have any mentors that were really into elaborate enclosure design. It didn't really start to hit me until I started keeping my rattlesnakes, and I set them up naturalistic for a number of reasons. Both from this is how I want to keep them, and then also from a functionality standpoint, just with managing venomous snakes. But giving them a more natural environment, more natural light basking cycle. I just started to see all these natural behaviors coming out of them, how they different times of the day they'd be moving into their basking position, and then after it turned off they were sitting there for a while, and then they would cruise around for a bit and then go back under where they like to hide at night. Really made me think a lot about what all reptiles will do with that kind of environment, because just not that they have anything special about them compared to everything else I'm keeping. I just happen to have them set up this way. So the enclosure that we're going to talk probably the most in depth about tonight is your Blue Beauty enclosure. And for everyone who's watching, that's a picture of the enclosure from one angle. I mean, it's hard to encapsulate this enclosure in one image because it's so large. So
and when I was taking those photos, he was trying to get out the entire time. So I'm like, photo, hook him, pull him back in, photo, try to make sure I know where he is. So probably not the best photos, I'll admit it.
All good. So how big is the enclosure?
It is 8 feet wide, 4 feet deep, and I think it's 7 feet tall.
Okay.
Either 6.5 or 7. But I can fully stand up in it with substrate. So and I'm 6'1", so it's tall. Fills up floor to ceiling of the basement. I've got it on a little a riser, because 100-year-old house in Michigan, we like to get water in the basement. I think it's 1,500 gallons or something.
Okay. So I mean, was there anything in particular that got the gears turning for this particular enclosure? Did you have the snake already and were like, I want to see this thing behave the way it's supposed to? What got you to the point of committing to this project?
Yeah. So I've had Big Blue for, I think, coming up on 8 years now. So since he was, 2 feet long.
Yeah.
and I got him at a pet store right outside of the town where I went to college. My one good reptile buddy that I knew in college, like he worked there, and he always was telling me about his old Taiwan beauty snake and how cool it was, how big it got, how much fun and the patterns on it. And I'd go to this pet store pretty regularly, and they had this blue beauty. And he was like, yeah, nobody wants it. It's way too mean. Like, nobody knows anything about it. And I was like, well, that looks like fun. You know, I like sassy animals. You know, my first reptile was a tokay, so how bad could this be?
Right.
And still, like, just not really knowing a whole lot about him. And so, yeah, first, he was my first colubrid, second snake. And yeah, had him all through college, moved to Michigan with him. He's gone through some shit. Like, I had my apartment, the thermostat broke and it hit 120 degrees. He was completely fine. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. This is an Asian rat snake that doesn't like to go above 85.
Yeah.
And like, yeah. And he was totally fine. Like, he didn't like it. He was completely in his water dish with just his nose sticking out. But, you know, like, I took him to the vet. Nothing, like, he didn't have a respiratory. He didn't have anything.
Wow.
So that was cool. But yeah. And I don't know. Like, he's always just been, like, in my mind, the coolest snake ever. Like, they're super pretty. They have awesome colors. They're bold. They're, you know, they're on display. They're interactive. They're really, really curious, like crazy curious. Like, I remember I had him in a 75 gallon with like a, you know, like that greenhouse plastic that's like rigid, but it's not like clear. It's like that opaque.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I had that as a lid. And I would put like cups of crickets on top of it when I would be feeding, like, say, frogs or lizards or something. And he would have his nose up to it and just like watching the crickets. Like, I would watch him. He would follow isopods, just watching them move around. He would, you know, always be out watching us when we're in the room. Never like, you know, like, oh my gosh, a giant monster, but just curious.
Yeah.
And so I've always thought they were just really cool snakes and really pretty, and it'd be fun to set them up in a, you know, big display so you could just watch them, you know, move around, interact. They're highly arboreal, so being able to watch a snake climb up and stuff just sounded really cool.
Yeah.
And so, like, growing up, or not growing up, but like from his earlier years and stuff, like, I didn't still know a whole lot about him. And to be honest, like, not a lot of people did. Like, I wasn't connected in the hobby. So, like, I didn't go to shows. I didn't know anybody breeding them. I wasn't really a part of any Facebook groups or forums or anything like that. And every time I would Google, you know, like blue beauty or blue beauty for sale, it'd be like, you know, a handful of forum threads and, you know, a couple websites offering them that were out of stock. And so it's like, I don't know, never really thought about breeding him. I just really enjoyed the snake. And then he just kept getting bigger and bigger, you know, more information became available and learning more about him. It's like, oh, this is a very big snake, arguably the second longest colubrid in the world type of snake. And so in my basement, like shortly after I bought this house, one of my big things I've always wanted to do is build these like built-in enclosures, you know, like floor to ceiling, part of the structure of the house type of thing. And so I built that along a wall in the basement, primarily for the iguana. But this snake was getting bigger and bigger. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to kind of split this and do one side of it blue beauty, one side of it iguana. That way he could have this big enclosure. If you guys follow me on Instagram, you will recognize that as the giant room of mourning geckos at this point. But his first enclosure, like, I guess after, you know, like a 75 gallon or 4x2 or something, it was a 5 feet by 4 feet by 7 foot room. And it had, you know, custom backgrounds all around, giant cork tubes and pieces like in the wall, a pond, a waterfall, live plants everywhere. Like, it was gorgeous. And so I moved him in there, and it was really fun watching him in there. Mourning geckos got moved in. He actually grew up with mourning geckos. Like, since he was 4 feet long. You know, started with a couple, then half a dozen, and then moved into that room, and I put more in with them. And like,
they didn't bother each other at all? He didn't try to eat the morning geckos?
no, he would just watch them.
Wow.
Like,
Huh.
just curious.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so he lived in there for a while, but the problem is the back wall of that enclosure is the basement, like, exterior wall. And so in the summer, it got too warm in there, and I
Oh,
couldn't keep it humid enough. And so he ended up getting a respiratory infection. And it was already like tough to get him out of there, right? There's cork tubes that are like in the wall, there's branches that are screwed in. And
yeah.
like, you know, these snakes are made of Velcro. Like, it it's hard to like maneuver them because they're so quick, they'll grab onto anything.
Yeah.
And so I had to get him out though to give him like the shots for the RI. And then I decided, like, all right, you're not moving back in. And so for a while, the plan was to build a big, like, wooden enclosure, like similar size to the grow tent. And, you know, that was the plan. Big wooden enclosure, big sliding glass doors, like the whole shebang. But I kept putting it off because, like, it's a very overwhelming project. And
Sure.
like, I'm not planning on living in this house the rest of my life, let alone another 3 to 5 years. So like, I don't want to spend all of this money and time building this massive enclosure. So it just kind of got put on pause for a little bit. In the meantime, like, he was in a 4x2, and this is when he's like 7 feet in a 4x2, and he was just pissed. Like wouldn't eat off tongs, would strike at the glass every time I walked by.
Wow.
And like, I've noticed, because okay, when he lived in a 75 gallon, he was fine until he got bigger, and then he got really mean. And then I moved him into that big, you know, jungle of a room, and within a day he was like a puppy dog, super curious, very just slow, long tongue flicks, just having a time of his life.
Yeah.
Then he moves in a 4x2 and he's pissed again. And so I was trying to think, I don't remember when I came up with the thought, but I was like, wait a minute, why don't I just use a grow tent? And so I get on Amazon, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, they're bigger. Like, I can get a bigger one than what I was expecting. I think when I priced out the wooden one, it was going to be like 8 feet by 4 feet by like 6 feet or 5 feet something. And it was going to cost, you know, $600-700 just to build, let alone, like, I wanted to do custom backgrounds. I wanted to do, you know, all these things. I'm like, dude, this is going to be a $2,000 project. And so I got on Amazon. I found a big grow tent for, I think it was like less than $400. I think I spent another $200 on, you know, the rest of the furnishings and stuff. But it was just like, light bulb. I was like, wait a minute. They don't need high heat, so I don't need to be worrying about running a bunch of power in there because, or like, you know, like heat bulbs and stuff, because the tents aren't built for reptiles. They don't have the best ventilation or anything, but you know, so I was worried about, like, oh, it's going to get too hot, the air's not going to circulate. But I was like, no, I can just get away with a little heat light. Holds humidity great in the winter, which is a big problem in Michigan because my furnace is in the basement, so like everything just dries out. And so ended up just working out perfect. I got it, you know, set up in probably a week or so.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it took like no time.
Wow. So what was did you have like a vision looking at this empty giant grow tent of, this is what I want this to look like once I'm all the way finished?
I don't think I had necessarily a vision, but I had things that I knew I wanted to include.
Okay.
Like, I wanted to give him a giant pond, like something that he can completely submerge in, that's going to add a lot of humidity to the area, but also just give him a big body of water, because you know, they can drink out of a water bowl or they can curl up in it if they have to, but like, I don't know, I want to see what he does with, you know, a big 40-gallon pond or something.
Sure.
So I knew I wanted that. I knew that, you know, these snakes are super arboreal. They're going to climb a lot. So make sure to add, you know, hides at different levels, plenty of branches to, you know, climb. And like, one of the biggest things was just maximizing the space. Because like you think of a 8 foot by 7 or 8 by 4 by 7 box, it's like you could do so much in there.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's not wood. You can't screw stuff into the side,
Right.
and so like how do I maximize all this space and like actually make it like usable and not just a like an 8 foot by 4 foot footprint, like actually use all the three-dimensional space.
Sure.
So, and I knew I needed to have I wanted to add as many gradients as possible, which I think is important for reptiles.
Okay.
Like I think we have a pretty good idea for the most part about like what temperatures, humidities, UV levels, like all that that animals need.
Yeah.
But the animal knows best. Like
Right.
if you can give them the option to choose how hot they want it, how humid, the UV levels, like they're gonna choose the right one.
Yeah, sure.
And so, with the the 7 foot floor to ceiling, like I knew I wanted to have a big gradient from bottom to top with temperature, humidity, UV levels, and just give him all the options. See how he interacts with it, see what he chooses and stuff. And yeah, then I just kind of got to work.
Kind of to sidetrack a little bit with what you just said, what have you found to be his preferred levels of those three factors, the heat, humidity, and UV? We see him spend most of his time. Really, it's just kind of all the above.
Well, he's got a few like favorite hides.
Okay.
So like his favorite hide that he sleeps in every night is a like 5 foot big cork tube, and that's probably a little over halfway up.
Is that it, right?
Yeah, that big one on the left. Yeah, so that's like almost halfway up the back.
Dead center, middle of the cage.
Yeah. Okay. He's got a sky hide, like you can kind of see it in that. Yeah, there it is.
All right.
Like that black one that's zipped out to the ceiling. He's got the big cork tube on the ground there, as well as there's a cave underneath the pond. So the stand of the pond, it sits in there flush, but then there's like all the space underneath it that stays a bit more humid, a bit colder. But like I've seen him in all of those hides, and it just kind of differs on time of year, shed cycle, breeding cycle, when he eats, just like all these different factors, kind of what he does after.
Okay. Yeah. So what you just mentioned, and one of the coolest aspects of the enclosure is the water feature. So I'm trying to find.
It was him escaping when I was trying to take the photos.
So how did you get the water feature to where it is, plumbing and everything? I feel like this enclosure is kind of like a scaled down version of what Zach Port did in his backyard. It's kind of like, right in between like doing bioactive and like an exoterra, and then doing what he did. You're kind of like you're like the middle ground between those two. So explain to me the water feature.
Well, first, it's not bioactive. It's just naturalistic.
Okay, so no bugs in there, nothing.
No bugs in there. I keep the substrate bone dry, so it doesn't support any worms, anything like that. But yeah, it's definitely kind of like that in between. Man, Zach's greenhouse is goals. Like when he was hinting at putting snakes in there, I was trying to convince him to put blue beauties in there for so long.
Yeah. I mean that podcast that I was able to do with him, just like, the whole thing was just mind blowing. Hearing about every little detail and the whole process, I'm like, the level of commitment that it takes to do something like that is just so incredible. It's so cool.
And like, dude, that guy's so inspirational. He still works like full time, and then builds that, and then maintains that. And adds to it, and like, that guy's an animal.
100%.
My water feature's not as cool as that. Maybe one day.
But it's much more practical for somebody to replicate compared to
a little more practical, easier to make at home. But so basically what I did. Do you have a picture of it you could pull up? It might help.
Did you send me one earlier?
I thought so.
Let me look again.
If not, no worries. We can pull it up, later. But I'll start describing it.
Yeah.
I'll paint a really good mental image of
here
it.
It is. All right.
So it's a 40-gallon pond. I'm doing a bad job already. It's like a water trough. So the thing that you
Yeah.
get from like Tractor Supply, the big Rubbermaid bin.
Okay.
I'm also like not even sure it's 40 gallons. Let's say 40 gallons.
Sure.
It's, you know, like say 4x2 circle oval. So it's one of those that I built a 2x4 frame for. And then I put, you know, like covered it on all sides. So if you picture like a wooden box, but the top is cut out, that way the pond can fit in. Yeah, that one.
There we go. Yeah.
There we go. So the pond just fits in perfectly through the top. All the sides are covered and everything.
Okay.
And then on the bottom, because it's lifted up off the ground, probably 18 inches or so.
Okay.
And so on one of the panels, the bottom's cut out. That way he can go underneath it and, you know, just one more hide, maximizing space.
Sure.
Yeah, and then it's got a little foam like aerator filter that runs into it. But honestly, most of the filtration comes from the plants.
Yeah.
Like that philodendron that's growing in there. Like I just cleaned his pond a few days ago. Like I, you know, just drained it, sprayed it down, filled up. Dude, those roots are probably 25 feet long, just coiled around inside of the
That's
pond.
crazy.
It's in like just a huge mat.
Yeah.
So like all the roots, the leaves, then a bunch of floating plants, you know, the water hyacinths, the duckweed, keeps it like really clean.
Yeah.
But I needed the foam filter and the water movement in order to add the humidity to the room. So like that was kind of one of the main things of adding the pond was, you know, I need there to be a humidity bank.
Sure.
It helps stabilize temperatures too. Like you see it a lot in greenhouses and stuff. There's you know, like barrels of water and stuff. And it's, you know, water's got a high specific heat. It absorbs the heat during the day, releases it at night. Vice versa, cools it down. So it just adds a humidity bank as well as a temperature bank. And then it's a cool pond for him to, you know, swim in if he wants to.
Yeah. So on that note, do you see that behavior out of him on any sort of regular basis?
I've seen him swim once.
Okay.
But there is dried duckweed just caked. All like I went in, I cleaned it off yesterday or a couple days ago when I cleaned the pond out. But like just dried duckweed all over the walls and the branches and like so he gets in there and then traces it all throughout the enclosure.
Okay.
Which funny side story. The first time my mom visited me in Michigan, we go to my apartment and right away I'm like, well, Big Blue escaped. I can see his hatch is open. And so I'm like, Mom, you settle in. I'm going to find my snake. And so I'm walking around the apartment and I noticed I had a 10-gallon aquarium and it was kind of something was off with it. And I looked and he got in there and there was tons of duckweed. He got in there and then tracked a trail of duckweed, like the living room, through the kitchen, like on the counter, down onto the floor, like around into a bedroom. And I ended up finding him like in the pantry at eye level, coiled up, you know, waiting for me. But like I just followed his little duckweed trail.
Oh my gosh. Wow, that's hilarious. Yeah, every now and then these things will surprise you.
I know.
I didn't see that one coming, but there it is.
Yeah. But I saw him swimming just, what was it, last weekend? He got in there. And then I just got cameras set up inside the grow tent. So I'm hoping I can actually like get some cool videos and, you know, see more of what he does with the pond.
By swimming, is it more like entering one side, exiting the other, or does he kind of wade in there? What's exactly
it goes in one side, out the other. So like,
okay.
I think I've seen him once put his entire body like in there.
Okay.
Like coiled up and stuff. Yeah.
All right. Interesting. Yeah. Cause I never thought of blue beauties as a species that would be semi-aquatic in any sort of way.
Well, I don't think you need to be semi-aquatic.
No, but would even entertain something like that. So it's
you never know until you try it.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, so it's super cool to hear that. I also want to talk about the plants in the enclosure.
Mm-hmm.
This is one thing that I am just a total novice on in every way possible. So what was your approach to the greenery in the enclosure? Was it anything specific to the environment or just plants that would do well in that setting? How did you
Yeah.
approach that?
Yeah, they had to be plants that were hardy, could handle a beating, um, easy to care for, that, could go a little while without water, could get really wet, just overall really hardy plants.
Sure.
And then yeah, tropical. So found a few good ones. Like all the ones in there like are the original plants. Like I haven't had to replace any plants in there.
Oh, really?
He hasn't destroyed anything,
Wow. Cool.
which is wild for a 10+ foot
I
colubrid.
know.
Like if you see all those, like the leaves, how they're all kind of like laying down a little bit,
Mhm.
that's from him like kind of crawling on top of them. But
Okay.
yeah, like they're in these, they're 10-inch nursery pots, and then they're heavy duty zip tied to cinder blocks, and then those cinder
Mm,
blocks are on the floor of the tent, but then like the substrate kind of covers a lot of that cinder block.
sure.
Because I didn't want him to tip things over and stuff. So in
Yeah.
that picture, like the hanging plant on the far right's a Hoya. They do great, high humidity, then go a while without watering. That tree looking thing, that's a Dracaena tree, another one that's
Okay.
like really known for being drought tolerant. And then all the ones with the big like broad leaves, I can never remember the names of them. I don't think it's a philodendron. It used to be, I think, a philodendron, then got switched to something with a fancy name.
Mm,
But they're very similar to like monsteras. So like,
okay.
you know, yeah, they like high humidity air, but they don't want to be sitting in water. And then the one that's going into the pond on the edge there, that's a philodendron. And I knew, like, when I put that in there, it was like maybe a foot away from hitting the water. And I was like, man, once that hits the water, it's going crazy. And sure enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just hardy plants. And like I'm been pretty surprised that, he hasn't dug any up. He hasn't, tried to squish them or anything. Like he'll go and he'll curl up on top of, the hanging basket of philodendrons. That's why there's nothing
Okay.
growing up from that hanging
Yeah.
pot. But
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask, is if any of these were preferred spots of his to be hanging out during his time.
dude, I gotta take like a time lapse of him in the tent, because like he uses every square inch of it. Like
That's
he
so cool.
goes from like the brackets on the ceiling, like the rafters that the
Mhm.
lights are zip tied to, like he'll be up there on every branch, going up, just every place you can think of. Like he will be there, especially now when he's, looking for a female.
Sure. Are this is going to show my ignorance on plants. Are any of these species anything that would be overlapping the snake in the wild?
Probably not. I didn't really
Yeah.
look too much into that. I don't think so.
Okay.
Um, Now I did build. It took me like 6 months, but I did build a 125-gallon Vietnam biotope a couple
Oh,
years ago,
okay.
with like a full limestone cave background, with like a cave in there with cave paintings and built-in lights and
Oh, cool.
stalagmites, and all the plants and microfauna were all from Vietnam.
That's awesome.
It was a lot of fun. It was a ton of work.
Yeah, it sounds
Like
like it.
the
Shoot.
background itself took me like 30 plus hours to make.
Yeah.
Um,
Damn.
and my idea was to make it for a, Blue Beauty, but nothing got ever put into it other than bugs.
Okay. Oh man. Yeah. Fair enough.
But I know Hoyas. I think Hoyas. I'm pretty sure those are at least that one. I think that's Hoya carnosa. I think those are at
Right.
least occur in Vietnam. I don't think they're native
Okay.
there.
Okay. Good to know. So yeah, what you were just mentioning about him looking for a mate. So that's something that you do aspire towards.
Oh yeah, yeah. I've been thinking about how cool it would be to breed them since I first got them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then 4 years ago, I got a female named Stelle. And yeah, I think this weekend, I'm finally gonna put her in there. I've been growing
Okay.
her, making sure she's big and strong for the last 4 years, and yeah, so that's gonna be pretty exciting.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of us have seen either in person or in videos, breeding behavior in a more conventional, rack style setup with colubrids. But it'd be so interesting to see what they would do with that. Like my spilotes, they're all over the cage, climbing in the branches, dragging each other around when they're breeding. So I wonder if you would see something similar with the blue beauties.
I've been curious. Like, I'm pretty sure Big Blue, which is the name of the male, pretty sure he's going to try to before I even close up the door.
Probably so, yeah.
Like, he's 8 years old, has never had the chance. He's also over 10 feet. Like, he's ready. You know? The female, she's a little over 7 feet, maybe pushing 8 right now.
Okay.
But yeah, big size difference. Like just their head size, their girth, and so like,
sure.
Hopefully she's feeling it too. If not, she has plenty of space to like run away and like different hides and everything. So we'll see what happens. I got cameras in there to watch it.
The real question on that is, if you do get a clutch, are you leaving him in there?
No.
Okay.
Because catching a 10-foot snake out of that room isn't too hard, but like catching 20, 18 long snakes or whatever they come out as, like that sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah, that's a very logical thought process on that one right there.
Yeah, maybe I think when I move though, eventually when I move and I build the 2.0 version, which in my head is like a 10 by 10 by 10 room that, oh yeah, dude, like full pond and stream and like multi-species and stuff. Like I would
put a picnic table in there.
What's that?
Put a picnic table in there.
Oh yeah. Well, no, that's the morning gecko 2.0 room. I've got a plan.
Okay.
It's gonna have a full little picnic table in there that you can sit and eat or sit there and feed morning geckos and stuff. But one day.
Yeah.
But yeah, and the 2.0 Blue Beauty room is gonna be like 10 by 10 by 10 and all that. And then I might leave them in there and get, live feed footage of the female incubating them and hatching and stuff like that. Because that would be really cool to see. Yeah,
that would be. I feel like, especially in a real walk-in enclosure of that size, stepping in and having a little baby scurrying, next to your feet and stuff like that would be such a cool thing to see.
I don't know how hard that'd be for feeding. Take them out individually, feed them, and then put them back in, or just throw in a whole bunch of stuff on the floor and hope that they all eat to their heart's content. But we'll cross that bridge.
Now we're going to introduce you to plastic tub.
Go from that to a
sorry. That would be. I have friends who have done that with scrub pythons, where they'll not in the adult enclosure, but like they'll raise like 4 babies in a 4x2x2 together from the jump, and that just gives me anxiety thinking about it, of like tracking who's eating what.
Yeah, I've heard of someone doing that with blue beauties and having really good success.
Okay,
of raising them in like pairs or trios. In like a little bit bigger bins, but then you just take them out individually, feed them, put them back in.
Okay,
but
interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we are about at that midway point of the show. We're going to go to our commercial break real quick. So stick around, everybody. We'll be back in just a few minutes.
One of the biggest growths we have in the reptile industry today are the rare species of reptiles that aren't worked with. That's right. That's why I went ahead and partnered up again with Brian Susan over at SUNDOWN Reptiles. Brian works with species such as kahua geckos, gargoyle geckos, all species of tree monitors. He works with Abronia and many other cool species geckos that you can check out all on his website. Head over to sundownreptiles.com, see what he has available. Brian's one of the best doing it in the reptile industry today. He's been on the show multiple times, so make sure you check out all of Brian Susan's episodes on Trap Talk Reptile Network. But more importantly, for the highest quality of captive bred reptiles, make sure you head over to sundownreptiles.com and make sure you give him a follow on Instagram. Thank you again, Brian Susan over at SUNDOWN Reptiles. One of the things I love about being a part of the reptile industry is all the learning, okay? Learning can be fun, and I can prove that to you. Thank you so much to today's sponsor, it's Gary Scavino over at gs.reptiles. I highly recommend you head over to his YouTube channel, follow all this man's content when it comes to learning about rare species of snakes you could be keeping in the hobby, and also just finding out how easy a lot of these rare species of snakes are to keep. in general. So thank you so much, Gary Scavino of GS Reptiles. Again, head over to his YouTube channel. Also head over to his Instagram to be on top of all of his current work and be ready for a big year over at GS Reptiles. Thank you so much, Gary, for your ongoing support. I really appreciate it. Cheers. Sorry for the interruption, folks, but a quick word from our sponsors. Green tree pythons, emerald tree boas, and plenty other arboreal snakes have been quite the popularity here at the Trap Talk Reptile Network, which brings me to today's sponsor, the Reptile Perch. Head over to thereptileperch.com and Reptile Perch on Instagram. See what type of design PVC perch is best for your arboreal reptile. But first and foremost, I would also check out David Brom's Green Tree Python availability on the website. And you can also check out his Instagram just to stay current on any projects or any productions that he posts. Thank you so much, David Brahms, for your ongoing support. Looking forward to seeing what you have to show in the 2025 season. When you think about building a good community and being a leader of that community, nobody comes to mind better than Mark Hager over at Texas Chondros. That's right. Make sure you head over to TX Chondros on Instagram and also head over to Mark's website. See what he has available green tree python wise and be ready for quite the 2025 green tree python breeding season out of Mark Hager. He's a veteran in the green tree python game, one of the best and nicest breeders in the green tree python game. He's been putting on the whole state of Texas for as long as I've known him. So if you want to see all the amazing other chondro keepers out of the state of Texas, another good reason to go follow Mark Hager over at TX Chondros on Instagram. And again, head over to his website, texaschondros.com. You can find all the links in the description below. Thank you so much, Mark Hager, for supporting the trap. Treat.
All right, everybody, we are back. So the next topic that I want to discuss with you is one that is definitely, I don't want to say it's a point of contention, but it's a point of a lot of discussion these days. And that is kind of like of the philosophy of reptile keeping, how it's been evolving over time. You know, and I feel like you are a lot more tapped in with the more naturalistic, bioactive style keeping part of the community than I am. So I think you have a really good perspective on this. But yeah, but what do you see these days in terms of that discussion? Where do you think it's heading?
Definitely more naturalistic, I think. I think like the biggest overall trend that I've noticed is people who, and myself included, but are focused on giving more to the animals rather than getting more animals.
Right.
I think for a while, and I think it's still the case for, you know, many people, and, you know, each their own, but, you know, it's that collect them all mentality.
Sure.
Of like, you know, how small of an enclosure, what's the minimum requirement? How many can I fit kind of idea. And now we're seeing, you know, a lot more people who are focusing on, you know, a single species, a single group, you know, a handful of individual animals, and, you know, just giving as much as they can to those animals. And I think, you know, a lot of that is, you know, the technology that's become available in the last, you know, 5-10 years, you know, for reptiles. It's the community, it's the age of, you know, sharing knowledge. You know, knowledge has never been easier to acquire. You know, you're not waiting for a magazine, you know, every month to try to get inspiration or learn something about a species. It's, you know, if you want to build a cool enclosure for an animal, you know, you just Google that animal and enclosure afterwards, and you'll probably find 20 examples in your first, you know, Google search.
Yes.
So like, there's just so much available knowledge and inspiration and stuff, that I think people are really just starting to fall deeper into specific things.
Why do you think that change occurred? I can't fully put my finger on exactly like if there was a turning point, because when I was kind of coming up in this, it was, you know, CB70 racks and the, you know, get these morphs and all these species and this stuff. And, you know, the people who were kind of the loudest voices were not talking about how to make this really cool big enclosure for this animal and you know, naturalistic keeping, UV lighting, stuff like that. It wasn't really discussed. Did you see a turning point to when that kind of discussion became more prominent?
Not really, at least, you know, and maybe that happened before my, you know, introduction into the industry and hobby side of it. Cause, you know, like I said, I've kept for years and years and years before I knew more than one person who also kept, you know, reptiles or something. And so, I don't think there's, you know, a defining moment that we can like pinpoint.
Yeah.
I think COVID had a huge, you know, influx of that.
Sure.
But that wasn't really, you know, the defining moment. It was happening well before then. That was just kind of, you know,
Yeah.
gave it the big push.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's kind of tough, you know, because you see it with, you know, house plants as well. You know, the house plant hobby. Like I've been
Yeah.
into
Very true.
plants for a really long time. Like I think I was like 1 or 2 classes away from like double minoring in botany. Like I
Oh,
just
wow. Okay.
I love plants, dude. They're so cool. But yeah, I think it's kind of like I said, you know, we're getting to the age of there's a community for everything, you know, a Facebook group for everything.
Sure.
And you can find information on pretty much anything.
Yeah.
Whereas 15 years ago, like that was not the case. You would have a single forum and you would be searching in that forum for a while to find an answer.
Mm-hmm.
God knows if you asked that question, you'd get shit on by all the old people. And, you know, it's just, I don't know, different mentality.
Yeah.
People, I think, are getting more open. There's a lot less gatekeeping. But like I said, I don't think there's one thing you can, you know, pin it to.
Yeah. No, I don't think there necessarily is either. I wonder how much of an impact TikTok had on it. Because I feel like the TikTok, I've never had TikTok downloaded on my phone. I've never used it. But from my understanding, it's a much more positive community in general than other places as far as
Yeah.
like comment sections and stuff like that. I feel like the format's not one where you can really, like, Facebook is formatted for like a 300 comment all out brawl, you know. Instagram, TikTok necessarily, it doesn't really have, it's not really formatted for that to thrive on that platform.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, I wonder if, you know, people being stuck at home on their phones looking at TikTok, and then certain, you know, influencers blowing up with that had a significant effect.
Oh yeah. Like, I mean, I don't know this for a fact, but I like to think that, you know, blue beauties have gained huge popularity in the last 4 or 5 years.
Sure.
You know, like I got Big Blue as a baby from a pet store that nobody wanted him because nobody knew what he was. He was
Yeah.
angry, whatever. And then years of just periodically Googling blue beauty for sale. And then, you know, this was before MORPH market, and like there was really nothing. Um, I think what happened though is I think that's when Snake Discovery started making videos about them.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you have the new generation of keepers that are getting into them. So you have the older generation that's breeding them, and, you know, kind of that back and forth. But
Yeah.
I think like 4 years ago or so is when blue beauties really started like taking off.
Oh, sure. That's when I was producing them. They were not hard to sell.
No.
Not at
And
all.
like the prices are more than dropped by half.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
what were you selling them for? Probably 500?
It's 500-600 a piece.
Yeah,
Yeah.
500-600. And
Yeah.
like now they're going for 300,
Yeah.
250. You know, like at shows it's between 250 and 350.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy. I think I've even seen them at 200 before once,
Yeah.
which in my eyes, like, I like that because it's, you know, these snakes are getting into more people's hands, and they're, you know, more people are becoming familiar with them. The other side of me is like, ooh, that's, you know, a little bit low for them as far as
Yeah.
like you're getting a serious animal for that. It's like
Yeah.
the $40 Savannah monitor, right? Or
Right.
the $20 Nile monitor. It's like, oh, that's a lot you're getting into, buddy. You know, for $200. Like I
Yeah.
think I said it earlier, but these guys are arguably the second longest colubrid in the world. And let me back that up in case anybody's watching. They were like, no, this guy's full of shit. I
Yeah.
might
I
be.
say it
But
too.
here's my argument. So the longest colubrid in the world is Pataeus carinata, the greater keeled rat snake. And like most people know, like it's a very big snake, the biggest colubrid.
Yeah.
So I might be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure that that's because of a documentation or a collection a while ago, like 50 years ago, where they found like a 15-foot one.
Oh, wow.
And so like they're like
Beats that to me.
15-foot colubrid. It's the biggest in the world.
Yeah.
Nowadays, like nobody's found one that big. Like you'll find a 12-footer, and that's a big male.
I mean, if that, I feel like the thing is that they're so much, they're not really heavy bodied, but like they're stockier. They kind of puff themselves out. And because like I had a big male, he was maybe 10 feet, and like holding him in your hand, you felt like this was like twice the girth of my Blue Beauty. That was a little bit longer than him.
I've never held a Crebo, but that's what I imagine holding a Crebo.
Yeah, I mean,
kind of that girthy but long.
A big yellowtail Crebo is just like, what the heck is this snake? This is not a colubrid. Like, what the hell is going on here?
Yeah, but in the 90s, when they first started importing Blue Beauties, there's somebody who had one that came in from that import that recently died and was 12.5 feet long. They had a friend who got one in at the same import, 14 feet long. Male. Yes.
Jeez.
So like they're big. They're big snakes. You know, that's a lot of snake. They're high energy, high metabolism. You know, they're always moving. They're curious. So they're always wanting to explore things, you know, and it's all of a sudden 10, 12, 14 feet long. So like that's a lot of snake to get into for $200.
Yeah.
Now I think they're the coolest snakes ever. And if you can take care of one, you absolutely should, because it's insanely rewarding.
Yeah. For sure.
But not everyone has the space for a giant grow tent in their basement.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, I'm glad you brought up just the truth of how big these snakes are. I've seen people post that like Blue Beauties are 7, 8 feet.
Oh my gosh.
And like
6, 7, 8 feet
maybe
long.
a malnourished one. What do you
or
like?
A 3-year-old one.
Yeah, like what snakes are you keeping? I don't know. I'm not sure how one can draw that conclusion unless they just don't work with the species.
I think it's a lot of people just regurgitating knowledge or regurgitating stuff that they read somewhere. Like, okay, so I really want to go to Vietnam and find these in the wild. And I'm kind of planning a trip in a couple of years to do that, document the whole thing, not catch the snake, just find one and follow it for days on end to learn like all of its natural behaviors. But like when you read a care sheet on Blue Beauties, like every care sheet says they're found at the openings of caves. Like,
yeah, that's what I always understood, you know.
Yeah, that's not the case though. Like it might be, there might have been a few or one that got collected at an entrance of a cave, but like you can't, it's just a lot of the same regurgitation of care. And then you kind of start asking why did we come to that conclusion? You're like, well, that's not a good enough reason. We don't actually know.
Yeah.
And so like, I really want to learn, you know, where they're from, what they do, how they live in the wild kind of thing. But yeah, I think they're more complex than people think too. I think they're smarter than people give them credit for.
Sure.
They're more personable. They have personalities to them.
I mean, in my opinion, they're a calm species. Babies might be a different story. Some babies can be a little intimidated, but like once they reach like 4 feet, they're not defense. Like they're chill. They're hanging out. They're enjoying themselves. Like,
and as long as you know how to read a snake's body language, like if you open your cages, your snake enclosure up, and your snake is coiling back, pissed off, of course it's going to strike at you if you reach down and grab it. Like, so if you kind of learn the behaviors, and like one of my big things with Big Blue is like I always, well, all my animals, but I've been really working on it with him, is just reinforcing positive interactions. So like I do it probably daily, where if I go down there and his head is poking out of his hide, I open the door and I put my fist like right up to his nose, you know, just for a few seconds. He licks it or smells it, whatever. And it's just to show him hands do not equal scary. You know, it's a part of your environment and not a scary or threatening part of your environment. But yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. I get on these rants and I just start talking, and then my brain catches up to me.
I know exactly how that feels. I'm in the same boat where I feel like I had something I was going to say immediately thereafter, and now I'm just filling time with nonsense words until.
What's your favorite nonsense word?
I probably can't say it on the podcast.
It's a naughty one.
Probably.
I like bamboozle.
It's a good one. Now you have me thinking about that.
I know. I'm the worst.
I know what I was going to say now. Let's go. I think a lot of the conception of why they, of their attitudes, I think it comes from people coming from species that are not visually acute, like a blue beauty snake, and applying similar principles like of a ball python or of king snakes or corn snakes or whatnot. And you reach into that, open its tub or the enclosure, you go behind the snake, you're going to be fine. A blue beauty snake is going to immediately key in on what you're doing, probably lock eyes with you. If you go to reach your hand over, it's like, oh, what the heck is this thing doing here?
Yeah.
Like, so
they're visual too. Like that's the thing is, they're visual animals. They need that visual stimulus.
Yeah.
Whereas like you keep them in a tub, like they're not getting any stimulus coming in.
Yeah, for sure.
Like I like to think it's the same as if you decided to put like a baby monitor in a little tub. It's like, well, yeah, of course it's going to feel stressed. It's a monitor lizard. It's high energy, high metabolism. It has needs. It climbs, like all these things that it all of a sudden can't do. And so any little thing is, stressful. It's always kind of on edge. And like I noticed it with Big Blue is, he went from a small enclosure to a big one, to a small one, to a big one. Every time he was in an enclosure that was a little smaller than he should be in, he was mad. He was aggro. And so like, yeah, if you're keeping a blue beauty in a tub and every time you interact with it, it's giving you that kind of response, of course you're going to think that it's a, sketchy snake, right?
Yeah.
But you put him in a big enclosure where it has all the space to roam, where it feels secure. It knows it has spots where it can go that it can get away from you. And, it's going to mellow out a lot, especially with I think, blue beauties being so big at some point, they know they're big, right? They have that like regal energy to them almost.
Yeah. They're not scared like if they're a 3-foot snake or something.
Or like skittish. That. Yeah. Just that skittishness just kind of dies.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's one of the coolest aspects of them, is it's kind of the same thing with like the spilotes. Like they're not afraid of you.
Yeah, and they're bold.
They're not necessarily coming at you or defensive, but like if they feel like they need to be, they're gonna, they're not gonna hesitate to show you how they feel. But I think that that's one of the most fun aspects of species like that is that, they'll stand their ground. And then there's a lot of interaction to be had between you and that snake, a lot of understanding to come to. You could start off with one that's, unhappy all the time when it sees you, give it a couple of months of some diligent work, and then all of a sudden this thing is crawling around your neck and being super chill. And, all it took was that snake understanding why you're there, how you interact with it, and then getting accustomed to that process to be like, oh, this is actually fine. And I have no reason to, not to fear this interaction.
Yeah, I think you have to work on building that mutual respect.
Yeah, for sure.
And like hit the snake knowing that I'm going to come into your space and I am not a threat to you, as well as me saying I'm going to go towards you and you're not going to strike at me, kind of thing. Like we're kind of understand each other. Like I know when I shouldn't pick him up. Like he gives me plenty of signs. So like if I'm going to pick him up every time he's pissed, he's going to associate me with that. He's not going to like hanging out with me.
Sure.
But if I only do that when he's in, the mood to be picked up or the mood to be handled or whatever, then he's not going to have that negative interaction. And then once he starts getting annoyed, he goes right back into the enclosure or something. Now that being said, he doesn't get out much because he's 10 plus feet of Velcro. So in the summertime, we'll bring him out in the yard and he'll climb along the trellis and the fence and stuff like that. But yeah, that's another reason I wanted to get him in something big, was because I knew like he's not one that I'm going to be taking out to handle the bigger he gets.
Sure.
He's not a red tail that's just going to sit on my shoulders for 6 hours and chill.
Yeah. Yeah, that snake is not going to stop moving the entire time it's out.
No
chance. That's what makes it fun. But yeah, definitely, you're not holding that snake in one hand, spot cleaning with the other hand. That
Yeah.
that's not going to be an
You
easy
can barely
process.
hold it with two hands.
Yeah. This is a good topic, kind of a interesting thought that Scott has. Did they actually like it, or did they tolerate it for the enrichment? I have a lot of different thoughts on this. None that I'm too committed to one way or another, but I want to hear your thoughts first, Logan.
As far as being handled.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe this can be extrapolated to any species, but I guess in the scope of Blue Beauties,
I don't think they like it as far as they are gaining something from it. I think it's definitely more along the lines of tolerance. Like one of the things that I think with, how do you acclimate your animal and make it, quote, friendly is, you see these animals in the wild and they are interacting with all these other animals without any issue, whether it's a turtle is sitting there and, a spider walks up the turtle, or a lizard or a snake is there and, another animal's walking by and they don't really care about it. Like I just watched a documentary and it had a scene with a rattlesnake, and then a tortoise came, and like the rattlesnake was like hunting and the tortoise literally like was walking over the rattlesnake and like just neither of them gave up about each other.
Yeah.
And I think that's because like they know each other. Let's say the snake views the tortoise as, you are part of my environment and you do not equal a threat. So like, how do you get to that point with your pets or your animals and stuff? Like you need to hang out with them regularly. You need to handle them. You need to not necessarily handle them, but like be in their space, and reinforce that positive interaction where they don't view you as a threat. They don't see, every time they see you, they think, oh, here comes the hands. Oh, he's going to try to pull me out of my hide or something like that. Like you need to reinforce the positive. That way, you both have that mutual respect of like, yeah, we're both here. We're both in the same environment. Neither of us want to hurt each other or anything like that. But I definitely think that's more of a tolerance. Like, I don't think the snake is gaining anything by being handled by me.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's,
other than like some enrichment and like new stimulus and stuff like that. But I don't think it's seeking it out and like enjoying it in that sense.
Yeah, I definitely would agree with the seeking it out. I mean, for one, it would be so hard to even perceive what that behavior would be in a snake.
Yeah.
I had one scrub python that, if there was ever a snake that I thought liked being handled, it was this snake, because it had gotten into a routine of whenever I would take it out, like its immediate move, slowly but surely, would just to coil up on my head.
Yeah,
and would do it every single time. I'm like, the snake is going to this spot intentionally, and whether or not that means it enjoyed the process to any degree, we can't say as humans with the current state of science. But that one always kind of made me question, like, maybe he enjoys this? I don't know, but
like it's a rabbit hole. Because
it's
a lot of these snakes like do have forms of like socialization. We see it with rattlesnakes, we see it with garter snakes, we see it with a number of species where it's like, you have to keep groups of them together because that's how they do best.
That's one of my favorite parts about keeping my rattlesnakes, is that not most of them, but a decent amount of them are in permanent cohab pairs.
Yeah.
And it's just it's so cool to see them interact. I mean, they're together most of the time when they definitely don't need to be. Seeing the maternal behavior of once the babies are born, how defensive the mom is of them, and she kind of like herds them in her coils, and they never really stray for very long. But
they still see us as like an animal. Like, they're not dumb. They know we're not a branch that they can sit on that's slightly warmer kind of thing. Like, they know we're an animal, they know we're moving, and yet they still choose to stay on us kind of thing. So like, is that them liking us, like, oh, this guy is my friend, or is it just something else? I don't know.
I can tell you with rhino iguanas, that is absolutely a personal relationship.
Oh, they're puppies, that's why.
I've seen that firsthand. But yeah, this is Scott's point is that as keepers, we should aim to be a part of the normal environment. I think that goes part and parcel of what we're doing. Said his mates Komodo would come over for scratches with a broom, and that suffices a beneficial interaction. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I think you go down the lizard and then crocodilian rabbit hole on this, and there's a lot more to that.
Oh yeah, and like tegus and like cyclurids and
yeah. There's a multiple hour podcast on just that alone. But one of the last things that I want to talk about that I think you're the perfect person to discuss, and we talked a little bit ahead of time, is that of the reptile shows these days. So you find yourself at quite a few reptile shows. I mean, how long has this been a pretty normal fixture of your life, traveling to reptile shows?
Pretty consistently since a little after I moved to Michigan, which was summer 2020. So
okay.
Little backstory is, so I graduated in winter of 2019, right before COVID hit. Graduated, was unemployed for a few months, and then got a job at Josh's Frogs, which is over here in Michigan. So packed up all my animals, all my stuff, drove cross country, worked at Josh's Frogs for a few years, and same thing, I did, shows with them. And then got hired at Exoterra after that to do their digital marketing, as well as trade shows and stuff.
Cool.
So I definitely have seen my fair view of trade shows over the last 4 or 5 years now.
I mean, and what's your general feel, I guess, as far as the current climate of reptile shows? It's very open-ended the way I just phrased that, but
I think I get what you mean.
Yeah.
Like dude, every time I go to a show, I feel like, a kid going to Disneyland. Like the magic of those kind of things. Like, I don't think will ever leave me.
Okay.
Like being there, and whether it's, the friends I've made, or it's the people there, or obviously the cool animals and stuff like that. Like, it just is such a good place. Like, it's a good place to spend a weekend.
Yeah.
But as far as like the direction of shows and stuff like that, they've definitely been growing.
Okay.
A little bit more so in this last, like, I'd say year and a half, maybe. There was the big COVID boom, so the shows right after COVID was like whatever you bring, you're going to sell kind of, idea.
Yeah.
Like, people were into the hobby. They were committed. They had money after, being unemployed and stuff like that. And it was just booming. And then little recession hit. A lot of people weren't selling stuff. Now it's bouncing back. And, so it's fluctuating. I've also seen a lot less ball pythons, which I'm sorry to anyone owning a ball python, but I am an oddball snake guy. And so I like to, the non-ball python here. Yeah. So that's been kind of a nice welcome change, is, less ball pythons, less crested geckos, more just kind of, oddities and, the oddball stuff.
Do you think that's more of an effort by promoters, or do you think that's more speaks to how the hobby is shifting?
I think it's both. I think the hobby is shifting and the promoters are listening.
Okay.
Because, I think the hobby is just getting more and more diverse, right? There's more and more different snakes, more and more different lizards, spiders, frogs, like whatever it might be. And to have 75% of your show be a single species of snake is a little too much right now. Now, there's still people for that. I mean, that's the driving force of the industry, is still ball pythons. So like, all respect given to that corner of the industry. But I think, we need to be able to have all the other things there too. Like, when I went to my first reptile show in Puyallup, Washington, in college, there was one table selling bugs, one table, and it was, everything from tarantulas to, I bought an Australian black widow there, which, looking back, it was probably not the best college pet, but just all these random things. And so now you go to a show and there's half a dozen invert booths, a dozen invert booths, and there's the isopod booth, there's the tarantula booth, there's the oddball, like, It's just growing and, you know, getting more diverse.
Yeah, that really is a huge change. I mean, like you were saying, you know, I remember when I was young going to shows between, you know, 2010, 2018, like there was the one invert table usually. And now the influx of plant vendors has been an interesting one too, where before it was like, you know, just it was really just the supply tables that would have plants kind of mixed in with their supplies, and now there's entire dedicated plant booths.
Oh yeah.
And and I, you know, I look at those guys, I'm like, you probably are cleaning up better than almost anyone here, you know, unless you're like a snake breeder who has one giant sale over the weekend. But it's interesting, but it's cool to see. You know, it breaks up the monotony of how the shows used to be, like you were describing, of, you know, majority one or maybe two species if you were lucky.
Yeah.
So, but and then so like my take on it from just going to a few shows was that after COVID hit, you know, the industry was booming, but shows like died. At least like the big shows were kind of struggling to get people through the door. Like people just for a while didn't want to come out to large events, and you know, rightfully so, considering, you know, the general feeling back at the time. And then certain shows, once the crowd started coming back, seemed like much more window shopping. Families found something to do for the weekend. Do you think that is still majority of the audience you're seeing at the shows, or has it become more of like a, you know, if you're people, like a greater percentage of people who are coming through the door are there to potentially spend money?
So far this year, I've seen a lot more people going to shows to spend money.
Okay.
Which, like, let's say, I think it was the Pomona show that we saw each other at, right? The one that was like during the wildfires and stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
So like that show, for
that
example.
was a shocking one. Yeah.
What's that?
That was shocking. Everyone was so worried that show was gonna.
Oh yeah.
And it was like incredible.
I know. Yeah. Like everyone thought it was going to be the worst show yet, which was already saying something, because the last few, you know, a lot of people go, plenty of people buy stuff, but it didn't have that huge numbers like the post-COVID, you know, numbers. And then this one was just huge, took off. And then, you know, the next few shows that I went to is very similar things of like, man, there's actually a lot of people, you know, spending money, and like vendors are walking away happy, and people are walking by with bunch of new animals and big tanks and, you know, big purchases and stuff. And so now I don't know how long that's gonna last. You know, we're not here to talk about politics, but you know, everything kind of goes up and down. So we'll see, you know, how long this rides.
Yeah, no, for sure. This is an interesting time. Yeah, I mean, I feel like the market has in general recovered. Like where we are right now this year is significantly better than a year ago today. But then the uncertainty hasn't gone away in general. And that's always a tough one. I mean, for every aspect of life, but especially when it comes to a luxury good like reptiles, you know, that uncertainty will definitely drive down the customer base much quicker in this field than others. So
yeah, it's unpopular. I'm about to say a very unpopular opinion. Keeping reptiles and what we do is a privilege. Like
I don't think that's an unpopular opinion.
Okay, good. I thought I was ready.
No, like at least here it's not an unpopular opinion.
Okay. Well, I think there's that big stigma, you know, of like where how do I word this? Like we owe it to the animals, like we're entitled to keep our pets kind of thing. And in a lot of ways, like we are.
But it doesn't mean that you can treat them as if they're a disposable item.
Yeah, but it's a luxury item, you know, to have all these animals and, you know, everything that goes into it, because also like it's the hobby you can't put down. You know, you can't take a break from this for 3 months and travel, and you know, like it's a lifestyle that you're getting into when you start keeping, you know, multiple reptiles and animals and stuff.
Sure.
But
yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. So with the current state of reptile shows, with what you see, what would you say would be a couple of things that you would like to see improved on the current way that things are done?
Deodorant handed out at the door with tickets. That would be a very nice change. If you go to a reptile show, put on deodorant,
Yeah,
please, for the rest of us. I think they're doing the right thing as far as like opening it up to, you know, the oddballs and the oddities and kind of
yeah,
getting into the other corners of the market and stuff. I would like to see some of the venues grow space wise, you know, like there's, let's say Tinley, for instance, like that's
sure,
a show that, you know, has grown and has been around for a long time, but the venue hasn't changed. They're just fitting more people there, it seems like. And so like the aisles are
yeah,
pretty small. It gets pretty crowded
sure,
where, you know, like it's tough to like walk around and, you know, look at everything and talk to people when like it takes 10 minutes to go down, you know, a single section just because of traffic. And
sure, yeah,
other than that, like I don't know what changes I'd like to see. I like what Colubrid Fest is doing, you know,
Mhm,
having more education, you know, the day
sure,
of lectures and stuff like that, and you know, having a Colubrid specific, like I like that a lot.
yeah. No, they're
And
breaking the mold there.
yeah, and I think we're seeing more of that. Like I know, like American Frog Days, you know, popular. We went to that recently in Ann Arbor, Michigan, but they do them, you know, kind of all over. So kind of those like more specific
Yeah,
shows, not just like a broad herpetoculture show, I guess.
sure. Yeah, that would be a great idea. I mean, you know, this is just kind of me talking spontaneously, but like, you know, what they're doing with like the reptile talks, like
Hmm.
if that was coupled around Pomona or Anaheim or something like that,
Isn't
I
it?
feel
I
like
thought it was
no, it's not.
Anaheim.
It's like a month before Pomona.
That seems counterintuitive.
I mean, in a way, I think maybe last year they did it at the same time as Anaheim. I
I
could
think
be
like,
wrong.
yeah, there's like the day before, like on that Thursday or Friday or something.
Yeah, but I feel like that brings a new audience to both events, you know, because like for me, and it sucks to look at it this way, but when I'm looking at traveling to an event, I have to look at it like, can I sell something
Hmm.
to cover my expenses on this trip?
100%. Yeah.
And when the trip is a symposium, it's like monetarily this is a straight up loss. It's gonna be a great gain in terms of knowledge and connections. You're gonna spend time with people, meeting new people who I've admired, but then, you know, this is not it's not an expo. I'm not, you know,
Hmm.
so and I feel like I'm not alone in that thought process within the reptile community, for better or worse. Probably
Hmm.
for worse ultimately, but you know, for some of us it is the reality. So yeah, I think it'll be cool if like what you were saying with what Colubrid Fest is doing became more prominent. And I know Tinley was doing it for a while pre-COVID, where they'd have talks throughout the days during the show, um, but they were never extraordinarily well attended unless it was like a really prominent speaker, just
Hmm.
because for one, very few people wanted to take that time away from their booth to go give a talk, and then
Yeah.
people didn't want to take time away from the expo as well. So, which I think in general not a bad concept, but probably the Colubrid Fest execution might just keep the attention on what they're doing on Saturday and what they're doing on Sunday to that day.
Hmm.
So it's not as you know, kind of sporadic as doing them both at the same time would be.
Yep. Are you going to Colubrid Fest? Making the trip?
I don't know. I really want to. It's the weekend after Dallas, and I'm definitely going to Dallas. But
Yeah.
I mean, but you're pretty close to Colubrid Fest.
Yeah, but it's also the same weekend as the Anaheim show, which I already committed to.
What? They're doing Anaheim in September?
July.
Colubrid Fest is
Oh
in
wait.
July?
Yeah, isn't it? Oh no, maybe I'm thinking of a different show it conflicts with.
Okay. I thought it was in September, the weekend after Dallas. Like the second
Yeah,
2 weekends after Labor Day, I'm pretty sure is Colubrid Fest.
I'll double check. I
Yeah.
know I'm going to Dallas too.
Okay. So yeah, I don't know. And that'll be another show where like if I have stuff where I can, you know, ship a box and have little part of a table, then that would be something potentially to do too. So but I just really like the concept of what they're doing. And it's kind of, unfortunate for me. They had the first one in downtown Indianapolis within walking distance from where I lived the year after I left Indianapolis. So like, all right, sick. Thank you, guys.
I went to that one last year, but I totally missed out on it because none of our products or any of our booth material showed up. So like we shipped 2 pallets, none of them showed up. And so like I got there on Friday.
A 1-day freight shipment.
What's that?
Oh, not from where's? Never mind. I'm thinking about from Michigan. That's so.
Yeah, I don't know where they went. I don't remember what happened, but like I got there Friday and then just drove home on Saturday because like I don't know.
Yeah,
it was like a 6-hour drive.
Yeah, that's it sucks. But then Fort Wayne, that's half as far as Indianapolis. So
it's only a couple hours from me, I think. Last I checked.
Yeah. So no, I'm hopeful. That would be really cool because I think what they're doing there is really special and something that I hope is replicated in other areas across the industry. I think it's a really cool concept.
Yeah. You want to see something cool?
Sure.
So I told you I got those cameras set up in the Blue Beauty tent. They got night vision.
Oh, look at that.
So
that's cool.
I've got it set so I get notifications if there's like motion or something. I keep waiting. There's another angle, different camera.
Okay.
Because I haven't said it yet this podcast, but Big Blue lives with a coolie flying gecko.
All right. Yes.
Which is like the equivalent of a flying squirrel, but for geckos. And like I never see it, and so like cool to have the cameras for the snake, but like I'm really hoping I can look at the gecko more.
Yeah, no, that's funny.
Yeah.
I mean, it is. I remember when you told me that I was so shocked that the snake didn't try to mess with the gecko at all. But
no, I have a video. I don't think I posted it. I should, but the gecko was out during the day, and the snake was like right there. And the gecko like starts booking it across the back wall of the enclosure and stuff. And like the snake turns and looks at it and is just kind of like watching it. And then like kind of goes around to another side and keeps watching it. And like, that was it. And then the snake turned around and went back into its little hide. But yeah, he doesn't care about him.
Yeah, no, it's always cool when you can have a cohab exhibit like that. And they just kind of live together in peace and harmony and kind of let them do their own thing.
Hopefully the female's just as cool because I'm pretty sure she ate a gecko when she was a baby.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Well, that could be something to watch for. All right.
Yeah, we'll see. She's got the taste for it.
She's out for blood.
I've also heard that when they're babies, they're such just omnivores, right? Or not omnivores, like generalists. Yeah.
Okay, that would make sense. Yeah, especially where they come from, they could probably get a lot of little stuff running around the floor.
I mean, a baby colubrid's going to be the snack to everything. So like they need to eat as much as possible, as fast as possible to get big quick. And like, dude, you live in Vietnam, Southeast Asia. There's little geckos and lizards and stuff like all around you.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, I'm excited to see what what you post about putting the pair together, some of the behaviors you see. I'm not sure if I'm not sure if anyone has really done what you're doing with Blue Beauties in particular with a larger setup like this and having them cohab. So, I mean, not saying it's never been done, but definitely no one who's as public as you are kind of showing what you got going on. So it'll be really cool to see.
I think they're the coolest snakes in the world. And I just want to, show them off to everybody and educate people about them. And, especially people who think they're cool and want to get them. It's like, yes, they are, but you got to know what you're getting into.
For sure.
Very much like a Spilotes. It's like, they're super cool. You need to be prepared.
Yeah, without question. Well, we definitely need to do another show once you are back from Vietnam and have.
That's going to be a while, but yeah, we'll do it.
Yeah. No, definitely would be more in the meantime, but that would be so cool to talk about findings from Vietnam.
Yep.
So
Yep.
cool. Well, I don't want to keep you too much longer. I know it is quite late out where you are. I really appreciate you taking this time tonight to sit down with me.
Yeah. Does anyone in the chat have more questions about the tent or Blue Beauties or anything?
Not that I saw throughout the episode, but if anyone else has anything last minute they want to throw out, speak now or forever hold your peace. But while we wait on the delay and the comments to come through, tell everyone where they can find you online, where they can keep up what you're doing.
Yeah. So my handle on everything is thatbeardedbugguy, all one word. I like bugs and I got a beard, so it's very fitting.
Okay.
Yeah, it's real.
I thought that was
I'm most prominent on Instagram. That's my favorite platform. That's what I like to post the most on.
cool.
I post a lot, daily stuff on my story. A lot of it is Blue Beauties and the grow tents and stuff, just because they're always out and doing something goofy.
Yeah.
A little bit on TikTok, but never been the biggest fan of it. And TikTok hates me for some reason.
That's nice.
And then I have a YouTube channel. I am just finishing up my very first video after a lot of people have been bugging me about it. So you're welcome to subscribe. There's no videos on there yet, but there will be soon. It's
okay.
Same thing, that bearded bug guy.
Cool. So we do have a question. How do you ensure the tent is snake proof?
A lot of zip ties. So the grow tents have those like big cameras right here, the big ports.
Yeah.
Where like you put in like the HVAC stuff, and they have 2 layers, and each one has like the drawstring type of clasp. So I just clasp them, zip them up, and then zip tie it on like both layers. And that does great job. The mesh is strong enough to keep a snake out. I wouldn't trust, like a big monitor lizard or a tegu in there per se, but it works fine for a snake that's pushing its nose against it. Yeah. Other than that, there can be little gaps or something, maybe by like where it all zips together, but zip ties work wonders.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I know people who've kept croc monitors and grow tents successfully. Somehow those things seem to be somewhat indestructible to a lot of reptiles.
I know. There's some brands out there too that are like really, really tough.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, cool, man. I once again, thank you for your time tonight. This was really a great conversation. And hopefully this was thought-provoking for some people to try to do something similar as far as a setup goes for their species of choice. So if anyone decided to do that based on this conversation, that would be a very gratifying thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, thanks for having me on. This was fun.
Yeah.
Time flies, man, when you're just sitting here shooting the shit, talking snakes with your buddy.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, it's every week by the time it's over, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's already been 2 hours. Like, this is kind of crazy. So
yeah. Right on, man. Well, yeah, let's do it. Whenever you want, I'm down to come back on.
Sounds good. All righty. Well, I'll throw you backstage and close us out real quick.
All right.
All righty. All right, everybody. Thank you for checking out the show tonight. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe here on the YouTube channel. Give us a comment, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. I said subscribe twice. For me, I'm on Instagram at scrubshepherd, Stephen Kush on Facebook, and Stephen Kush or at Kush Reptile on YouTube as well. I drop a new video every single Friday on my YouTube channel, and Kush Reptile on MORPH Market. So with all of that said, thank you guys for tuning into the show tonight, and we will catch you all back here next week for a new episode.